Hey, what's going on everybody? Today I took the opportunity to create a visual guide for installing the REDLINE AIRSTOCK Gen 2. This is going to be paired with the REDLINE N7 Milsim HPA engine. Just to be clear, this video is only covering the AIRSTOCK installation. I've already put out a video covering how to break down your M4, as well as a video covering how to install the REDLINE N7 Milsim HPA engine. So feel free to check those out. Links are in the description below, and those are going to be all the references you guys need to make everything in this video work together properly. I broke this video down into 3 parts. Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3, and these 3 steps are taken right out of the REDLINE AIRSTOCK user manual. I'm basically just going to give a visual video guide on how to go through this installation process. So Step 1 is going to be modifying the Gearbox shell. As shown in the instructions for the REDLINE AIRSTOCK Gen 2, we need to heavily modify the gearbox in order for this install to work. The first cut that we are going to make is dremeling out a pathway for the airline to run out the rear of the gearbox. Using a Sharpie, I roughly outlined the area in which I need to remove the material. The airline is going to go out at an angle from the engine into the airstock. It's going to look something like the angle that's shown with this file I have held up onto the engine right now. So that's our first cut, a pathway for the airline to run through the rear. Next up, we need to remove a large portion of the rear top side of the gearbox. This is basically going to give us the room that we need to install and hand tighten the airstock into place. Once everything's put together, you're actually going to need to get behind the engine and then tighten a retention screw, and that's what this cut is going to allow us to do. Once again, I'm outlining the area that needs to be removed with a Sharpie. Okay, so both sections are marked off. I'm going to go ahead and head over to my Dremel and use a metal cutting bit as well as a sanding bit to cut out and smooth these sections. You really want to be sure that you smooth everything out on this install so that the airline can't be cut, pinched, or snagged as we continue through this installation. Alright, I am back and done with the Dremel, and here is how the gearbox looks after I removed those sections. Clearly, the large section on the top has just been totally removed, and then as I flip it around towards the rear and the underside, you can see that I now have ample room to feed my airline out of the rear of the gearbox. I'm going to go ahead and clean out the gearbox shell off camera. I'm just ensuring that there are no metal scraps or any dust still remaining from the Dremel work. And then once that is all done, I'm going to go ahead and install the REDLINE N7 Milsim HPA engine into the gearbox. Once again, I'm not walking through the HPA engine install. If you need to see this process, check out my video covering it in the link below. Alright, so with the engine properly installed, all of our cuts seem to work and function as they should. The airline has plenty of room to pass through the rear, and our chopped gearbox is still securely holding the HPA engine in place. That completes Step 1. Step 2. Prepping the lower receiver. To prepare the lower receiver for the AIRSTOCK install, we need to cut a section of the buffer tube mount off. To get a look at how much of this mount needs to be removed, I slid on the REDLINE AIRSTOCK sling plate, and then I pushed the REDLINE AIRSTOCK regulator over top of the sling plate. You can see that there is a decent gap between these two pieces that needs to be flush once we're done making our cuts. To ensure you take off the right amount without going too far, I would mark where the AIRSTOCK sling plate ends with a Sharpie. The Sharpie is rather thick and it's a bold line. If your line is accurate, you can actually just cut to right before you hit the Sharpie line, and this will provide a small lip that the regulator can then slide onto while remaining flush. I'll once again head over to my Dremel off cam and show you guys the results. So here is the modified buffer tube mount. You can see that I removed just about the back half of the buffer tube mount, ensuring that my Sharpie line is still completely visible on the remaining portion of the mount. But we still need to cut the hose down to the right size to make this all work together. Step 3. Fitting and cutting the air hose. Finding the right place to cut the air hose is actually pretty simple thanks to REDLINE providing a perfect spacer with the kit. This circular white plastic spacer that ships with the AIRSTOCK kit is the exact length that your hose needs to protrude out of the sling plate to perfectly line up with the regulator. By sliding this spacer down the hose and to the base of the sling plate, where the spacer ends is now going to be the exact location to cut your hose. This was pretty hard to do while showing the camera, and it does need to be precise and as clean of a cut as you can make. I just hold the spacer tight to the sling plate and then push a blade through the airline for a clean cut. Now if we've done everything right, this should assemble with absolutely no issues. To assemble the airstock after all the prep work has been done, you'll notice I removed the actual stock from the sling plate. I just did this to get a better view for the camera. Removing the stock is not necessary. So with the sling plate held in place, insert the regulator onto the buffer tube by pushing the hose into place first. The hose is going to snap into place in the regulator once it passes through the internal O-ring. After that, push the regulator into place on the buffer tube mount until the pieces are flush or as tight as you can get them. While holding all that in place, insert the provided retention screw from the REDLINE AIRSTOCK package, and this will secure everything in place. I hand tighten it to get it started, while my other hand remains clamping these pieces together, and you'll see that now that we've removed the back portion of the top side of the gearbox, you can easily get an Allen key into that retention screw to securely tighten everything. With the airline now securely inserted into the regulator, and with the regulator now securely fastened onto the buffer tube mount, we can air up the system and check for any leaks and proper functionality. Screwing in the SLP 13 cubic inch tank, the engine is now aired up and functioning as it should. I don't hear any leaks, and that's looking good. And that pretty much wraps up the install. To get the actual buttstock back on if you took it off, it's simply a hex screw located at the base of each connection point. This should be blaringly obvious, but you're going to need to remove this stock every time you twist on and twist off your tank, as the actual stock is going to get in the way of the fill nipples as you try to rotate your tank off. Just assemble the rest of the rifle as normal and you are good to go. Thanks for checking out the video, guys. As always, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to stay in the loop with any epic builds, cinematic gameplays, and unique product reviews. I'll see you guys in the next one.